What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to learn how to build a custom camera with AVFoundation similar to Snapchat and other popular apps. So here's the app we're going to be building. You can't exactly see the camera because it's a simulator, but we will be actually linking up my physical device so we can actually see what's going on. The red background is just where our camera feed will actually show up, but we'll do that, and then we'll also hook up the shutter button to be able to capture a photo and show it on the UI here. So if that all sounds good, make sure you start by absolutely destroying that like button. If not for the video, definitely for the crazy setup that I did to get my physical device mirroring on the computer. So that sounds good. Let's get into making a custom camera for your app. Alright, let's begin by opening up Xcode and creating a new project. We're going to stick with the app template under iOS, and let's go ahead and give this project a name of Snapchat. You want to make sure your language is set to Swift, your lifecycle UI kit, and your interface is storyboard. Go ahead and continue, save the project wherever you'd like. We'll toss it onto our desktop, and let's jump right in. So the first thing we want to do is close this right panel. We can also expand our window, and we can jump into our view controller file where we will be writing all of our code. So what do we really need to do to make a custom camera? Well, the first thing in here is import AVFoundation, which gives us a lot of audio and video functionality out of the box from Apple. Now, the next thing that we want, and if we just write out some comments to understand the flow here, is we need to have a capture session. We also need a photo output, and that's where the actual image will go once the user takes a photo. We're going to need a video preview. We'll need a shutter button, so something to actually tap and take the photo. And we also need some other intermittent stuff in here, like checking permissions and whatnot, so we can get into that. So the first thing we'll do in view.load is set background color for the view, since it is in fact a camera, so I'm going to hard code this to be black. And before we actually continue any further, let's jump into our info plist, and we want to add two privacy permissions in here. The first one we're going to add is privacy, and we want the camera usage description, and this is going to be please allow to take photo. And we can also go ahead and add the microphone one in case we want to later extend this to allow for recording videos. We can say, please allow to record audio. And make sure you have these, otherwise your app will crash when you try to access camera feed. So now we can jump back to our view controller and get on with all this stuff. So cool, so the first thing we want is a capture session. So I'm going to go ahead and declare this up here. We're going to say var. We can just call a session is going to be an AV capture session optional. We're going to need to create this down below, which is why it's optional. The next thing we're going to want is a output. So I'm going to say let output is going to be a AV capture photo output is what I believe it's called. Yep, just like that. The next thing that we want is a preview for the actual camera feed once we hook it up. So we're going to go ahead and say this is a preview layer, and it's going to be a AV capture video preview layer. And this is the layer that we're going to add the actual camera feed session to actually render it on the UI. And let's see, the next thing we want is a shutter button. So I'm going to go ahead and let's call it shutter button instead of just button, so we know what it actually does. So we'll go ahead and create a button here. And if you think about a shutter button, we don't actually want like a fill in this, just like Snapchat. We just want a rounded border of a circle. So we're going to create it in here and just give it a nice border here. So let's see, let's go ahead and say button.layer. Corner radius, we'll need to assign this. Let's say our button has a frame, and let's go ahead and hard code this. So we'll need to go ahead and center it, but for now we can say 0, 0, and let's say this button is perhaps 200 by 200. It should be a nice big button. And the corner radius will be 100, giving us a circle, so the width divided by 2. Now we also want to give this a border width of perhaps 3. And I'll also go ahead and give it a nice border color of perhaps white so we can actually see it. So we'll say white.cg color, and I'll actually bump this up to maybe 10. So cool, there's our button. Let's start taking care of actually getting the camera to show up. So what I'm gonna do here is the first thing we wanna do is say check camera permissions. And if we don't have permissions, we need to request it from the user. And in that same function, we'll say, if the user already has granted permissions, go ahead and set up the camera. So we'll go ahead and create this function right here. There's gonna be another function, and this one is going to be set up camera. So let's start filling this in. So in the check permission, we need to go ahead and take a AV capture device, and we want to switch on the authorization status for video. Now, this basically will give us a couple cases here. We'll get this error, and if we hit fix, it'll go ahead and stub them out, and we can start fixing these. So in not determined, we need to request permission. If it's restricted, we can't really do much. We should probably show an error, so I'll show a break there, and a break if it was denied, and a break here as well. And if it was authorized, we can just go ahead and say set up camera, since the user has previously authorized the permissions that we need. So now what we can do in here is we want to request the permission. So I'm going to say AV capture device. And these AV capture devices, for some clarity, are basically inputs you can give to a capture session. So things like the front-facing camera, the back camera, the mic, the telephoto lens, and we'll get into that in a moment. But we want to say, go ahead and request access is what we want for video. Now this is going to give us a completion handler with a boolean based on what the user did, which is granted. So here we can say guard that permission was granted, else we can go ahead and return. And if it was granted, we want to go ahead and call setup camera. Now we want to do that on the main thread since we are going to adjust the UI. And we want to say self-optional setup camera. The reason we want self-optional is because we are going to capture weak self here so we don't cause a memory leak. And we can say setup camera. So this takes care of making sure that we've got proper permissions, and now we need to set up the camera. So the first thing we'll do here is we're going to say session is going to equal a AV capture session. The next thing we want to do is try to get the device that we want to add. So we're going to say if let's AV capture device, and we want to get the default device for video. If we're able to get that device, we want to try to add it. So after we have gotten it, we need to say do catch here because we're going to try to create a input from the device. So I'm going to say input is going to be AV capture device input, and you can go ahead and create this with the device up above. So the model here is that inputs get created with devices. So they encapsulate the devices that we want to add to our capture session. So it seems a little redundant, but it's the way that Apple has decided to build this. But the next thing we want is we're going to say if session can add input, we're going to go ahead and add it. So we're going to say session add input. Now the reason we want to say can add input is because some devices contradict one another. Now what I mean by that is, let's say you have a camera session that is showing the feed of the front-facing camera. What happens if you try to add the back camera? Well, it's not going to be happy with you, so it'll actually go to the else. This also applies when you try to run this on a simulator. Well, there's no camera on a simulator, so you're not going to be able to add this particular input. So now once we've added this input, we also need to add an output. Now let's take a look at why this is yelling at me up here. It's because we need to prefix it with try. Now input is the device like I mentioned, but output is what type of output should the photo or video go into once we try to take a photo. Now we already created an output up here as a AV capture photo output, so we can actually use that here. So similarly, we're going to say if session can add output of output, we're going to say session add output of output, looking pretty good. So now that we've got an input and an output, at the very bottom here, we do want to say session.startRunning. So that looks pretty good. We also want to retain the session into our global, so we can say self.session is going to equal session. Now we also need to add this session to the preview layer. So we're going to say preview layer, which we've declared as a global up above, dot session is going to be session. And let's see, what else do we want? Now we want to make sure that the video feed doesn't get distorted or stretched out or anything. So we can also set the video gravity on here to be resize aspect fill. And I believe that's all we need to actually get our video showing up. Now let's go ahead and build out our actual taking photo functionality before we give it a run. I'll need to hook up my device and screencast it, so let's do it all in one shot. But before we do that, you might want to throw an error down here in the catch statement in case you do get an error thrown. But this is the basics of it. Now, we need to also give our video preview layer a frame as well as a frame to our actual camera shutter button. So we need to override view did layout sub views, go ahead and call super on it. And the video preview layer is pretty simple. We called it preview layer. Its frame is basically just going to be view.bound. It's going to take up the entirety of our actual view. And then the shutter button, we already have a frame for it, but we do need to go ahead and give it a center. So one thing that we could do is assign the center here like this. It says CG points. Now the X is pretty simple. We'll take the entire width of the view and divide it by 2. And the Y is a little more interesting. So what we want to do here is say view.frame.size.height. And we're going to subtract 200. Let's just say 200, and that'll be basically up from the bottom. We'll see how that looks. And let's see, don't forget to also add this stuff to your sub views. So the video preview layer is a layer, so we're going to go ahead and add it as a sub layer. So here we can say preview layer. And then afterwards, on top of that, we need to add the shutter button. So I'm going to say add sub view, shutter button. And we also need to connect our shutter button to a actual function. So we're going to say here add target to self. The action will be did tap take photo, and this is going to be for touch up inside. And let's go ahead and write out that taking photo function right down here. It needs to be a Objective-C selector. We'll say private func. And the way you take a photo is pretty simple. So we're going to say session, which is our global session. And we are going to capture a photo. Now let's see if I can remember what the actual functionality here is. So we don't want to add an output. We do want to capture a photo. So let's see, it should be off the session or it could be off the output. So here we go, it's off the output. So we're going to say output capture photo with. And the thing we need to actually pass in here is photo settings. So we can say AV capture photo settings, and you can actually change these settings if you so choose to. And this has things like quality you can set in it and a variety of other options to be configured, but we're not going to do that today. And we also need to pass in an object that conforms to AV capture photo capture delegate. So we're going to do that, and I'm just going to say self here. So whoops, let's go back to that view controller. So once we have said self there, we do need to conform to that protocol. So here we're going to say AV capture photo output delegate. Let's see, should be in here. If you're not seeing it, just actually do this, a capture photo delegate, and the autocomplete will help you out in case you type it wrong like I just did. And once you've done that, there is a function that it'll complain that you should add. If it doesn't complain, you can jump into here. And there's a function to actually get the taken photo. It is called photo output. So there's will begin capture. There's actually a couple of functions in here now that I look at it. So will capture, let's find the one that we want. So there's did capture, that looks promising. There's did finish processing photo. So let's see which one of these we want. So it looks like did finish processing is probably what we want, because that actually gives us a photo back as a parameter. So let's come back into here, and we are going to say did finish processing. And again, you want the function that actually gives you a photo parameter, which is a AV capture photo. Now you might be wondering, what the heck is an AV capture photo? It's basically AVFoundation's version of the photo output. So we first want to convert that to data. So we are going to say data is the photo, and then we want the file data representation which will give us data back from that photo. And now what we can do is we can create an image from that data. So now that we've got this here, you can return. And for those of you familiar with this next piece, you can go ahead and instantiate a UI image with data just like that. Now, for the purposes of our example, we're just going to add this onto the UI so we can see our captured photo. So what I'll go ahead and do is create a single image view right here. We're going to say image view, and we're going to assign this image into the image view just like that. And it's probably important to spell it correctly, so let me fix that. Let's go ahead and add this as a sub view like that. And we're just going to assign the content mode on here to be aspect fill. We don't want it to, get distorted and not maintain its aspect ratio. And then let's see, we also, of course, want to give it a frame, and the frame is going to be the entirety of the views bounds like that. And the other important thing you can do here, because we said session.start running when we set up our camera, we want to stop the session now, because presumably we have the image, overlapping the camera feed, and that's just going to unnecessarily, use our hardware to stream the video. So we can say session, and we can actually say stop running. So we can use session optional here, or you can just use session, which will come in as a parameter. We're going to use session optional here, which is the global instance we created up here. So that's basically all there is to it. Let's go ahead and run this in a simulator. Let's see if it crashes or not. If it does crash, it's because you don't have a camera functionality, but we did say if can add, so I'm curious to see what'll actually show up. And then before we wrap up, I'll hook up my physical device here and give it a run on there to see the actual camera in action. So there is our app launching. It would be nice if we can just see the shutter button position and make sure that's looking good. So bear with my simulator here. Always loves to be slow when I'm recording videos. All right, so there is our permission, which is looking good. So we're going to say cool. Our shutter button is obnoxiously large. So let me go ahead and actually make that smaller because nobody needs it to be that large. So we said 200 here. Let me try 100. That's probably much more appropriate. And then we'll say the corner radius is by 50, and we'll probably need to adjust the center here as well. So instead of -200, we'll say -100. Let's go ahead and give that one more run. And now our shutter button's looking pretty good. It's actually still probably too big, but now we don't see our camera feed because again, there's no camera, but the one thing we could do to check if our preview layer is showing up is we could set a background color to this. So I can say the layer has a background color, red. Let's actually use system red.cg color. Layers require CG color backgrounds, and now you should see that the whole screen is in fact red. That's how you can validate that the preview layer is there, but our actual camera feed just isn't showing up. So let's go ahead and I'm going to connect a physical device, and I'll cast it onto the screen here for everyone to see the final result. So I shall be back in just a moment. Alright, so I've got a pretty crazy setup now. I've got my device on the right hand side. I'm also using AirPlay so everyone can see it, and hopefully everyone can see my Xcode too. So I'm going to go ahead and build and run this onto my physical device, and it's yelling at me because I should change it to that. So let's go ahead and do that and jump back over here, and it looks like it has moved it. Alright, that's alright. We can go ahead and give this a run. And we should hopefully see that camera permission. Since I'm on a device now, I can hit OK. And look at that, I see my camera. So there's my keyboard. There's the picture of my cast. So a little bit of Inception going on. But here's my hand water bottle for some proof. But there we have it. There's a actual camera that we were able to build out with AVFoundation and capture sessions. Now, the cool thing about this is how Instagram and Snapchat and TikTok build out their custom cameras, because it gives you a lot more control than a image picker controller. So if you want to get nuts with like filters and effects and AR and all that cool stuff you see in these really popular apps, this is the foundation to get started down that track. So that's all I've got for you guys today. I'm hoping my video capture with this ridiculous setup is gonna come out well, so we shall see once I get to edit this video. If you haven't dropped a like down below, definitely do so. If not for the video, definitely for my absolutely crazy AirPlay setup right now. And subscribe to the channel if you're into iOS and Swift. I try to post daily here, although lately I've been a little under the weather. And definitely don't hesitate to comment any video suggestions, what you like, what you don't like. If you just want to say hi, I love replying to all you guys. I try to go through comments multiple times a day, so love hearing from y'all. So thanks again for watching. I'll see you all in the next video.